Hey everybody, my name is Matt, and I'm a software engineer with 4 years of AI experience. Today, I'm going to be breaking down which AI model is the best right now, because at live events I host in New York City, everybody is always asking me this same question. For me, AI is commodity. Whoever is making the best model at the time is the person that I'm going to spend money with, and I think that just makes sense if you're a smart consumer. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about what the best AI model is currently and how to kind of determine that. There are two major providers for the best AI tools on the market today. And when I mean best, I have some categories I'm going to show you in a bit, but I just want to talk about the naming structure of these two companies first, right? So you'll see names like Claude Opus, Claude Sonnet, Claude Mythos, these things, and you sometimes might be scratching your head like, how do I actually tell which one is better than the other? Well, that's super simple. The hierarchy of models for Anthropic goes something like this. It's Mythos is the best. Opus, most people have access to this one, which is the best. Mythos, only a certain amount of people have access to. Sonnet, and then Haiku. Okay, so think about this, Mosh. Just keep the idea of Mosh in the back of your head, and then you'll be fine, right? And so Opus has, different releases. Like currently we're on Opus 4.7. I think Sonnet is on 4.6 and Haiku is on like 4.5 or something like that. On the other hand, though, companies like ChatGPT and OpenAI do things a little bit differently. Instead of having this like hierarchy of different models, they have it like this. They just have ChatGPT 5.5, GPT 5.4, and then within these models, you can actually select the different quality levels that they have, right? So something that I found is the ChatGPT 5.5 low and fast is like one of the best experiences that I've currently had with agentic programming. GPT 5.4 on extra high reasoning always got me some really good results, but it's different for each company, right? So GPT, it has just 5.5, 5.4, 5.2, 5, right? And then Opus and Anthropic, it's just a little bit different. They have these 3 different model tiers, and then each one of them has updates as they go along. Now that you understand that, I'm going to talk a little bit more freely about these models and kind of how you can determine which one is best. If you feel like you're behind with AI, I'd like to give you this free gift. I put together the 100 hours back AI roadmap, which is basically my 4 years of experience using AI, what stages I needed to go through in order to become AI native, and where I got stuck and how you can get past the stages that I got stuck at. I broke my learning process out into 6 stages, and if you go to my website and fill in your info for this quiz thing that I created, it'll tell you where you're at and what steps you need to take next to save more time with AI. No matter what you're struggling with, somebody has been there and solved it. So just go to matthewferrose.com/roadmap, fill in your information, and if you'd like a more personalized solution, there's also a link on the thank you page that you can fill out to book a one-on-one call with me. I'd love to help you out. So just to start off, I'll say that the 2 models in contention right now in 2026 are GPT 5.5 and Opus 4.7. If you're using these other models like Haiku and Sonnet or whatever, then you're probably wasting your time, honestly, in my opinion, mainly because unless you're trying to make like a cheap and affordable like AI tool that is used for like customer service or something that the model output doesn't need to be that good, then don't really use those models, because the outputs of those lower models that were just up here before really are not that great. The frontier, the best models on the market right now are definitely these. And so what can we actually compare these 2 models on in order to understand what the AI tool you should be using today is? Well, let's start with something really simple. Let's start with the price, right? So if you've used AI before, then you probably know that you can get a $20 a month subscription, but that comes with a little bit of a caveat, right? As a software engineer and as a programmer, I feel like I get a lot more use out of the GPT 5.5 models than I do the Anthropic models like Opus 4.7. And that's because of these things called rate limits. So when you're using AI tools, like this $20 per month is not actually how much it costs to run the hardware that an AI or an LLM needs in order to run. In fact, it's not even close to what it needs. Because if I was to take a look at this $20 per month and actually compare it to the cost of running the hardware that a model like Opus 4.7 needs, it'd probably be more about $2,000 worth of compute that I'm getting out of Anthropic. And that's kind of crazy. It's like, how are you going to be paying $20 a month and getting $2,000 a month out, right? That is a bad deal. And that's definitely not going to last for a company like Opus 4.7. So this like $20 per month is really a trick to get you relying on AI tools more, using AI tools. And they will do whatever they can to make sure that the users of this tier don't get as much usage as the users of the API tier, right? I spelled that right? So if you didn't know, there are actually two different ways to use these different models. There's the price that most average consumers use, which is like $20 per month. You kind of forget about it, you pay whatever. And then there's the API cost tier, which works a little bit differently than you would expect. So if we're looking at something like ChatGPT 5.5, I'm going to pull up the pricing tiers over here. In terms of the input, which is the messages that you send to OpenAI and their models, it actually costs you $5 per 1 million tokens. And you think to yourself, like, what is a token? How much is that information? Well, I would say in a pretty focused, like me designing one feature on a website that needs to have some sort of moving component or some sort of tool use or some sort of like a little bit more than just me asking one question, right? That's probably about 1 million tokens. Like one focused feature designing is about that much. So if you're looking like this, right, it costs $5 per input token and then $30 per output token for a model like GPT 5.5. And now I'm not paying that because, I use the subscription, but companies like whatever software company, XYZ company, are paying this cost. They are paying the $30 per month and $5 input token costs. And that, my friends, is super expensive. And that's why kind of the whole pricing dilemma of Claude and these tools isn't really something that consumers have to worry about. It's more about companies and people who pay over API. And you can see here, look, pricing for Opus 4.7 is $5 per million tokens and then $25 out per million tokens, which is super, super expensive. Like you can rack up a bill of $30,000 per month if you're somebody who's using these AI tools pretty much every day or constantly working with agents or something like that. And it's really tough to keep up with that sort of demand if you're a company like Anthropic or Claude, right? So you say to yourself, okay, what would I rather do? Would I rather service the $20 a month people and give them as much usage as possible and allow them to go crazy on the hardware? Or should I help the people who are on the API tier, give them more usage, give them more access to compute, and don't worry so much about the $20 per month tier? Well, if I was the head of Anthropic or if I was a businessman, I would probably say the API tier one, right? Because they're making me more money. So if you think about this, right, this leads into kind of my next point, right? It's like, what is the amount of usage that you get out of these models? And for me, I really think that OpenAI definitely takes the cake in terms of usage. If you've used any of these AI models before, you know that rate limits and hitting your limit in terms of how much AI you can use in one day happens mostly when you're using a Claude model. I don't think I've ever really absolutely ran through my rate limit when using a GPT model, mainly because they give so much more compute and so much more access for their $20 per month than than Anthropic does. And that's something that really makes me want to say, I think ChatGPT, OpenAI, has the edge in terms of usage and availability for their services. So let's do this. Let's start a tally. In terms of price, OpenAI and Anthropic are kind of at the same level. You can say ChatGPT 5.5 is a little bit more expensive over the API, but we don't really use that too much. But in terms of availability and usage, ChatGPT is definitely winning in my book. So as I keep going down this list of different things, let me know in the comments down below if you agree with me, if you're somebody who personally sees, oh yeah, there's a lot more you can get out of Anthropic models when you're using them at night or something like that, something that I don't know, please just let me know. Okay, so now that we talked about usage, something else that I want to talk about is availability, right? And that kind of ties into the usage thing, but this is more of a, rather than the amount of usage you get out of it, the most you can take out, I'm talking about how often can you rely on the software to be up running and working and actually doing its job on time? Well, let's take a look at some graphs that show the uptimes of these different softwares. So if we look at Anthropic uptime, we can see Claude status. It looks like out of the past 90 days, Claude.ai has a 98.66 uptime. And that's not that good. Really, you would say, okay, 98.66, that's really great. That's amazing, right? No, in software, having the 3 nines or the 4 nines is definitely one of the uptime percentages that companies should strive for. And Claude is definitely just not a company that's hitting those numbers, at least not anymore. That's because they definitely have a lot of people using their tools, using their products, and what they're doing is definitely not an easy task. But I mean, hey, here's the number, right? If I'm paying $20 a month and I'm getting comparable amount of intelligence, I'd rather pay for something that has more uptime than the service that doesn't, because every day that I'm not using that $20, I'm basically being billed and charged for a tool that I can't use, right? And so let's look at now the OpenAI uptime. If you look at the OpenAI status, 99.98% uptime. Oh, whoops. Yeah, 99.98% uptime, 99.82% uptime with ChatGPT, and Codex is 99.98. But it looks like GPT 5.5 is actually having an issue right now, ongoing for 1 day. Again, like this, since AI companies are constantly trying to try new things out and people are using AI a ton, it's easy to see that these systems can fail pretty much at any time, and you shouldn't rely or put your entire company's back on these products. But if I was somebody who had to just make a rational decision on which company has better uptime and more availability, OpenAI definitely does. So I'm going to give availability to OpenAI, actually. So also in terms of usage, I got to take Anthropic off there. All right, so it looks like OpenAI is pretty much ahead of the curve over here, right? We got 3-1. I don't know how this is going to end, but I really want Claude to pull through because they have some great tools, right? All right, so great. Let's talk about now the kind of the biggest thing, intelligence, right? Can the AI tool actually do what I want it to do when I ask it? Like, is it going to just waste tokens, waste my time, give me bad outputs, and just make it so that my life is a living hell? Yes, both of these models are not perfect, but I think there's a clear winner when it comes to the amount of intelligence that these AI tools provide. And for me, the clear winner is actually kind of both. The reason I say that is because intelligence is such a generalized word, right? If I want an AI tool to write me something, I would prefer using a Claude model because it sounds more human. It doesn't technically mean it's better, but it sounds more human, so I like doing that. On the other hand, the ChatGPT model is so much better at writing code, in my opinion, because it doesn't really have all that fluff, or it doesn't really care too much about how it's coming off to you or sounding human. It just goes out and does the job. But also, when I'm doing something like designing a front end or a website, I need to use the Opus 4.7 model because it has more of a human understanding of what things should look like, right? If you actually were to design and do front end using a ChatGPT model, you would get something that would look, oh, poor DeepSeek sitting over here just watching. You can hide over there, man. You would get something that really would not look good, right? You would get something we call vibe coded slop. And so let me pull up my website right now and explain what I'm talking about, right? So this is my website, MatthewFurrows.com. If you're interested, please come check it out. But I want to talk a little bit about how ChatGPT kind of made this entire thing look terrible, and I had to really use the Claude tools in order to fix it and make it look nicer, right? Whenever you say, okay, design a front end for this, it will just put everything in a card. And I don't know why it does this, but it makes designing with ChatGPT 5.5 an absolute nightmare. And if you don't believe me, you can even see this, guys. Look, 5 days ago, credit where credit's due, GPT 5.5 is an absolute beast, but useless for UI UX. Dev with 13 years of experience, have never been impressed with the model's problem-solving capacity, but GPT 5.5 absolutely takes the crown. Its capacity for planning and getting nuance is amazing. It's absolutely useless for generating UI and designing UX. It literally has no clue what good UI UX looks like, basically not even junior level. I would just call it a random guessing at this point. Damn, that's pretty crazy. Though some people have some, let's see, use the images model, give it details. Now, some people have some ways to work around this. You can say, use the image model, give it details of your project, like project files, and ask it to make the UI for it. Then you work from the image that the image model made. That's pretty interesting. But just for basic usage, the intelligence of GPT 5.5 for front end is really bad. But everything else, it's really good. So that's the issue, right? So Anthropic, the way they design their front ends, the way that it's able to create front end systems and UI is actually really good. I really enjoy the way that it codes when I'm asking it to design interfaces or buttons or anything like that, right? So like on my website, if you go to matthewferroz.com, right, this was all pretty much designed using Claude design and just prompting Claude code, right? Look how nice this button comes down. Look how nice these buttons highlight and everything like that. It's just super simple, easy front-end design. And even for like posts like this was pretty much just a one shot of me being like, okay, create me a, booking event page, and it told me how to use cal.com. And if I was to do this in ChatGPT 5.5, it would be a mess. It would just be cards on top of cards on top of cards. So in terms of intelligence, I do think that ChatGPT edges one more time over Anthropic, but I also can't say that and like I can only use the ChatGPT 5.5 model. Anthropic is good enough where you have to kind of add them in combination. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to remove one of the ticks over here and just leave it even, because I really believe you have to use both. And then that pretty much brings it down to my last point here, which is going to be a little bit controversial. We're talking about vibes, guys. Now, vibes have become much more important than probably anybody would have guessed now in 2026. But I think there are some things that you need to talk about when you are a developer, and Anthropic's vibes recently really haven't been that great in terms of supporting open source and making it so that users of tools like OpenClaw, users of tools like Hermes, they are essentially getting what is owed to them when they're paying the $20 a month subscription. And in the beginning of this video, I talked about how Anthropic or any businessman, it makes sense for them to want to charge this API pricing when using these tools. But I really think that the way in which Anthropic handles these situations are really not that great. So Anthropic will say things like, oh yeah, we're reinstating OpenClaw and third-party agent usage on all Claude subscriptions. This is great, right? But there's a caveat. You only get to use it over the API pricing. So that means that, hey, the $20 a month you pay for that subsidized usage, you essentially just do not get access to. And so that means that, hey, sorry, pay more in order to access your open source tools. And Anthropic has every right to do this, but in terms of vibes, I really don't think that makes me as a developer feel all too appreciated. And who cares about that, right? They're a business, but that's just how I feel. Now, on the other hand, we have companies like OpenAI that constantly just reset limits like always, right? So whenever OpenAI, this is just 14 hours ago, right? We found and fixed 2 issues that could explain degradation of capability of GPT 5.5 in Codex for the last 48 hours. We are monitoring over the coming hours, fully confirm. I will reset usage limits this evening. You might be saying, hey, this is a one-off thing of resetting usage limits, but no, like the OpenAI and Codex team seem to really love resetting limits and giving more access to people. They will directly say like, okay, tools like OpenClaw, tools like Hermes, you can use our models and get really great outputs out of them. Like, I'll give you an example over here. It would be impossible for me to use something like Hermes with a tool like Anthropic's, because I have things that need to constantly be running. And if I run out of the $20 extra tier that Anthropic gives, or if I'm being charged over that API price, then it's not worth it for me to pay that $30 a month or $25 per million input tokens for usage like figuring out my daily schedule, or small things like improving my workout routine or making sure I'm always up to date with my nutrition and things like that. That's why tools like Hermes, tools like OpenClaw, they really rely on this subsidization of AI, because you just spend so many tokens when having these jobs continuously run and continuously do things. I mean, who knows? Maybe, again, it's entitlement. Maybe it's just me wanting more access to AI tools because I think AI tools are great, but I really do not like the vibe of Anthropic when it comes to developer tools and making it so that as a developer, you're feeling appreciated. All right, so with the scores that we have right here, let's be fair, guys. You should definitely be subscribing to ChatGPT, the $20 a month tier, to get access to 5.5 and Codex. I really think as of today, they are the one that's running this race. But if you're a serious developer and you actually do pretty much full stack implementation, it's probably still worth, honestly, getting both. And the only reason I say that is because, again, ChatGPT 5.5 is awful at front end. And unless you use something like Claude Opus 4.7 or even 4.6, which I heard is still pretty good, you are not going to be getting the front ends that you want. But for me, I don't really design front end all that much anymore. And when I did pay for my $20 a month subscription for Claude, I would only reach for it for front end. And now that a lot of the front end on my website is done, MatthewFroze.com, I don't really need it all too much. And so that's why I canceled my Anthropic subscription. I actually only pay for my OpenAI one right now. I do still get access to the models though. I will be completely fair. I volunteer for a nonprofit, so I have access to their models if I ever need to reach for it again. But $20 out of my account is not hitting Anthropic's. And honestly, it's really hard to say what company has our best interest in mind, because you could say like, oh, because ChatGPT gives us more access to these tools and models, they're a better company, right? Well, not really. Remember, there's that whole government thing, right? With Anthropic not wanting to do mass surveillance and ChatGPT being the one who did it. So there's like a lot of different things that you need to understand and take into account. But as somebody who's just excited by AI, doesn't really care about all that drama and things like that, and just wants the best output when using AI tools, I really think that you should be investing into a ChatGPT subscription. And unless you're going crazy and actually like doing some really heavy developer work, I really think it's good to start with that $20 a month subscription instead of that $200 a month subscription. If you are somebody who's paying the $200 a month for this tool, let me know in the comments down below and explain to me what you're doing with that subscription that warrants that price. I'm really interested in hearing, and I'm considering maybe even upgrading once I have more time to do some development. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I really appreciate your guys' support, and I hope you learned something.